Hey, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Arch Talk 101. And what we're going to learn today is what is the difference between using vanes or feathers, advantages and disadvantages of both. But before I do that, I'd like to let you know of an exciting new coaching program that's coming out where you can learn online. You don't have to drive anywhere. The coach will come to you over a Zoom meeting, similar to what I'm doing here on the video portion of this. And you'll have weekly meetings where you can talk about your form and get ideas and solve problems. And you'll also get some personal one-on-one coaching as well. If you want any information on that, I'll leave a link into archerytalk101.com and just go there. And when you get there, just look at the coaching tab and click on that, and it'll give you information on what to do to get your application get into the coaching program. It's going to be really good. We're offering discounts. We got one discount going on. It actually ends tonight at midnight Central Time, where you're going to save some money. You're going to save over $1,000 on your year's worth of coaching, as well as an extra hour of private one-on-one coaching. And the offer now is for 20 or 52 weeks, 1 year. And it also includes your family members. So your spouse or your kids can join in that for that same price. So go check that out. If you need a little extra help with it, I'm the archery instructor, and I've been doing this for over 25 years, taught many people how to do it. So now back to the program here. I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using vanes and feathers. Now, originally, the bows were all fletched with feathers because vanes didn't exist at that time. And it's just fairly recently that we've been able to have, the plastic or, the non-feathered ones. And some of the advantages of feathers are, they're natural. They're easy to repair if you have, crunkled up feathers. Just to stick them over steam and they straighten right back up. That's one advantage of it. The other advantage is they're a little more forgiving. They come in contact with your rest or anything, they'll fold back out of the way. And that's why your recurves and longbows use them, because they do fold back out of the way. They don't kick your arrow out as far. Now, the new modern compound bows, you're not going to have, if it's set up right, any contact with your fletching, unless you're using something like a biscuit that is designed to contact all of them. And you can use feathers in a biscuit as well. One of the things you do when you're doing feathers is put a drop of glue at the front and back of each feather. That helps hold it in place, because you got that ridge up front that's going to keep you from, catching on that as you do go through like a biscuit or anything. I just know when I fletched them, I always went with a drop of glue on the front and back of them, just as a habit, just to make sure that front and back gets sealed down and don't catch on it. Some of the disadvantages to using feathers is when they get wet, they kind of shrivel up. So they're not going to do as well. Some of the disadvantages is they have a little more drag in them. Which can also be a little advantage too, because the extra drag is actually going to slow it down slightly. Not a lot, but it's going to slow it down slightly. At most hunting ranges, you're not going to notice a difference to really be any different. So some of the the advantages is they do fold out of the way. The disadvantages, they do get wet. They're easier to fix when they get messed up. I've been able to shoot feathers still grouping right where they're supposed to be, and there's a chunk missing out of the feather. One of the advantages, they don't make a lot of extra noise when they get damaged. They're still just the same basic noise you have been before. So I still shoot feathers. I've gone down to 4-inch feathers instead of 5-inch feathers on recurves and longbows. I use the 4-inch feathers still on new bows. You can use them. The only thing I have to be aware of is if it's going to be a little misty out, a little rainy out when I'm out hunting, I need to make sure I keep some arrows dry, because as they get wet, they don't fly quite as well. They collect more water, and then when you shoot, you have water spraying all over. So not quite as desirable. Now let's get into vanes. Now, the very first vanes that come out were real hard plastic, and they weren't very forgiving. Uh, they didn't move much, and now we don't have to worry about it because all those, unless you've got some really old stock, which probably are brittle and going to break anyway. The new vanes are actually really good in that. Here's some of the advantages of using the vane. You don't have to worry about water on them. They're always going to be there. They're not going to have to worry about shriveling up. Uh, they're a little bit smoother, so you have a little better speed out of it initially. Now, once you get back to a little further distance, there's less resistance, so that's where you gain your speed. In the first few feet, feathers are lighter, so they're generally going to start off a little fast, but they're going to slow down a little bit more because they're a little more drag. Where your vanes are a little heavier, so it's going to be a little slower, and then later on down the range, because of the less drag, they're actually going to keep their speed a little bit longer. Now, we might be talking about 1 foot per second or 2 feet per second at most. So we're not talking about enough to really worry about unless you're trying to shoot 100 yards, 200 yards, something like that. You're not going to really notice really any difference in them. So some of the disadvantages of a vane is if it gets messed up, where it's a little crinkle in it, they don't fly very well at all, and they make a lot more noise. Now, I haven't tried it because I don't shoot a lot of vanes, but if they do get messed up, I've heard you can use like a hair dryer and then heat them up and they'll straighten back out. I haven't tried that yet, but that's something that if you do get them messed up. You can use a little bit different type of glues on them. For feathers, I prefer the Fletch Tight, the Fletch Tight and Fletch Tight 2. Those work really well on them. The advantage of Fletch Tight 2 is that work on your carbons and everything else. So that's normally what I get is the Fletch Tight 2. You can use your CA glues. I wouldn't recommend those on feathers, but you can use those on vanes. Putting them on, it's very thin strip of the CA glue. If you get on too much, you'll see that it'll actually turn white around the outside of your vanes. That's because you've got too much squeezed out. So it's a very thin bead you want to put on there. There's really no advantage to putting a drop of glue on the front and back of your vanes because they are such low profile, where your feathers are a little bit higher profile. You can fletch a vane being straight, offset, right or left helical. It doesn't really matter. That's one of the advantages of it. One of the disadvantages of feathers, if you're going to use, you can fletch all of them straight or a little bit of an offset. If you can use a right helical fletching on them, you have to use the right wing and left wing for left helical. So that's kind of the disadvantages of feathers. We come back to those. So we kind of go back and forth a little bit here, but kind of comparison in between the two. So it basically boils down to what do you like to use? What are you going to be most comfortable with? Now, if you're going out and purchasing arrows already pre-fletched, finding feathers are going to be really difficult to find. Most places don't carry them because you're catering to mostly your traditional archers because they're not going to shoot vanes because they just will not shoot off of a recurve because they're shooting off a shelf and you're going to hit the vanes no matter what you're shooting. So the feathers fold away. So you're going to get commercially fletched arrows are going to be pretty much exclusively in vanes. There are a few places that do carry some feathered ones, but normally those are going to be your places that actually carry a lot of stuff for recurves and longbows. And so you can go in and try those and you're going to use feathers for those. So that's kind of some of the differences between the two vanes and feathers. What do I recommend? I use feathers because I started out before vanes even existed and I just like feathers. So I stay with those. Most of the people I shoot with, except maybe my kids, because I fletch their arrows and I do them in feathers because I have a lot of feathers from my store. Most people you see are going to be shooting some vanes of some kind. And nice with those, you can get different styles. There's all kinds of different ones that cause different things to go on, but just your straight vane is going to be really nice. in picking out your arrows. You can get lots of colors no matter what you're going to do, whether you have veins or feathers. So like the previous podcast, I talked about some of the differences between them and fletching them up. So now, which one do you use? It's probably going to be cheaper to use veins. If you're worrying about cost per arrow to fletch them, your veins are going to be a little cheaper to do that than you use with feathers, because feathers more expensive, because you can't synthetically make them. They actually have to get a feather. Traditionally, feathers were turkey feathers, and that's why you see that little bar shape on the traditional one. And that's something you can do too, is you can grab a turkey feather and you can shave it down the middle, and you just have to know it's a right or left wing, so you know which way to fletch it. If you have a left wing feather, you're going to have to fletch it into a straight fletching, or maybe just slightly of an offset. You can't go with a right helical, because the feathers have a natural shape going one way, but yet you're trying to fletch them going the other way, and they just don't work very well that way. So you can always pick up turkey feathers. There's a lot of turkeys out there. So that's one advantage. You can just go pick up your stuff and make your own, but then you have to know how to make them. You're going to have a little more trouble. Sometimes it's easier just go ahead and buy the pre-made ones, because you can get all kinds of different colors. You can get yellow with the black stripe in it. You can get green with black stripe in it. There's just lots and lots of different ones. I've even seen some that are dyed into kind of a little camel type pattern. And there's just lots of different options. Same thing with veins. I've seen veins that have different symbols on them, like you might have a deer head on it, or you might have some, or I think Easton puts their little Easton symbol on them. And there's all kinds of different things they can print on, because it's a plastic material, so they can print them and mold them any way, any color scheme that they want. Of course, those are going to get more expensive when you buy the nice little cool ones like that. But so that's kind of my little thoughts on the differences between the vein and feather, whether you want to fletch with one or the other. Basically, it comes down to, what do you want to use on your arrows, veins or feathers? If you like to fletch them yourself, you have an option. If you don't like to fletch them, you pretty much have one option, is whatever color scheme the manufacturer is putting out for that day. So you'll see several boxes in the store, and they'll all be fletched the same colors. And you might find older ones or newer ones are now a little different color. So it's just, they'd pick what colors that you're going to use. That's the nice thing about fletching yourself, is you get to pick your own color scheme and size. And you can get smaller ones. Your veins come in smaller size. Most of your feathers are going to be 4-inch or 5-inch, or even full length ones. And your veins come, 5-inch down to 4-inch, 3-inch, 2-inch. And I think I've even seen some like an inch and just under 2 inches, really small. You have your bow tuned up really well, then you don't need much for fletching. So that's options. You can play around with your setup. Nice thing about fletching yourself is you get to play and see what works best for your setup. So once again, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101. And if you want to see any of these other podcasts, I'll leave a link into the Spotify account, so you can go and listen on that as well. Also, there is the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. That's where we post information about, like we're just talking about here, tuning tips, form evaluations, where we can look at you and help you out with that. It's a little bit of you post your video and take a look at it. And I'll leave a link in the description below. And that is your Facebook group. You can search for Archery Talk 101, and you'll find it that way, but I'll leave a link in it as well. And I'll leave a link to archerytalk101.com, which is the website that's associated with the podcast as well as the Facebook group. And there you'll find links into items that I recommend. There's tools that you can, when I do a little video on how to serve in a peep, I'll show the tools I use for that. I show a video on how to reserve your center serving. I'll show you the materials and where you can go buy them. So you can places you can buy the stuff that I use and recommend on there, as well as you can also get tips and tricks on um, how to set up your bow better, how to shoot better. But your best deal is look at coaching. Coaching can give you a lot of good information and really quick. You know, I believe all archers have the ability to hit the spot they're aiming at. Everybody can do it. If one person can do it, anybody can do it. And it's just a matter of how long it's going to take you to figure out the right way, or get into a coaching program where we can actually look at it and we can get you there a whole lot faster. So once again, you can find that on the archerytalk101.com website, a link to get into there, the coaching. And once again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.